everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Allison, and today we're going to be talking about the brand new grip mats from Waffle Flower Crafts. Now, I've spent quite a bit of time playing with these mats, and I filmed while I was playing, so I decided to make this video of the top 10 ways that I found these mats to be useful for card makers. I realize this is a longer video than normal, but hopefully you'll hang in there with me, and I hope you'll find some inspiration along the way. So without further ado, let's get started. I wanted to first show you the mats that are already on the market from Waffle Flower, starting with the water media mat. I think this came out maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. And after that, they came out with the mini media mat, sorry. You can tell how well loved mine is. It's pink because that's from red ink stains, and as you know, red ink stains pretty much everything, but the mat works perfectly fine. This is the mini stencil mat, and you see this in almost all of my videos. Again, very well loved and works just as great as the day I bought it. These are very flexible. They're made of silicone, so they're easy to fold up and easy to store. So I have loved these products. And here are the grip mats. This is a huge release for Waffle Flower, and there are 6 grip mats in total. You can buy them separately or as a bundle. So there's a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 and an A2 size, basically. You have a 6 by 6. There's a 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, which is essentially a half of a letter size piece of paper. And then these two are special because these fit into your Mistis. The larger one fits into the original Misti, and the smaller fits into the mini Misti. And then here is the Big Daddy, the 8 1/2 by 8 1/2 grip mat. They also came out with a couple accessories. There is the Grip Mat Guides Trio 1, which tells me that they have ideas for a Trio 2. And there's a stencil extender. So let's open it up and see what we get. So in each grip mat, you get 2 alignment guides, which is nice that they give you 2. And then there is the grip mat itself. Now the grip mat comes sandwiched between 2 carrier sheets. The grip mats are made from photopolymer, which is basically what your clear stamps are made from. And that means they're easy to clean. So here you can see what it looks like. This is the smallest size. And I knew it would stick to glass, but I wasn't sure if it would stick to my craft mat. This is my Altenew craft mat, and it does stick, which I'm happy about because, as you know, I use this mat in most of my videos. So let's get started. The first way is tape-free stenciling. And a lot of us, when we stencil, we end up using tape to keep our paper in place, right? And it's wasteful. So this is the smallest grip mat, and I've placed it on my mini stencil mat just so you can see things a little easier. So I've put my little die cut on the grip mat, and now I can just place a stencil on top. And I don't have to put any tape on either the paper or the stencil to keep it in place. Now, I'm going to be stenciling a lot and stamping a lot in this video, and I'm going to breeze through those parts because that's not the important part of these, of what I'm doing in this video, but I did want you to see what I did when I was testing out these products. So it is pretty clingy. You can see it was a little difficult to get that off. All right, so now you can see the red ink on the sides that's on my grip mat, and that's not a problem because you can just wipe these off with water. So I'm just going to come in like I normally would with my stencil mat with a wet paper towel, and it just cleans right off. And I'm even going to come in with an actual white piece of paper so you can see that it's nice and clean. All right, the second way to use this is for ink blending. And by the way, I'm using this cute little popcorn stencil and die set. I've been wanting to use this set to send a card to my son at camp. So you see I have these little tiny die cuts that I've placed on the grip mat, and it's just holding them in place. And now I can ink blend really easily, and I don't have to worry about the little pieces moving. And again, I'm getting ink on the grip mat, but it's easy to clean off with a wet paper towel or whatever you use to wipe off your inks. And there's this little stencil for the larger piece of popcorn kernels. So I'm just placing my stencil there and it keeps it in place. And you can see this stencil is clinging to this grip mat. If the grip mat is too sticky, you can just kind of like press your hands on it. That will get rid of some of the stick, but it retains its stick. All right, number 3, you can use it in your Misti. Now, I mentioned before that there were a couple sizes of grip mats that fit into your Misti, and it even says it on the packaging. This size fits into the mini Misti, and it's meant to replace the foam insert that comes with your Misti. Or in my case, I have the little mouse pads that I purchased for my Mistis. So I'm just placing this mat right into my Misti. And now I can stamp. Now, for me, I always have little scraps of paper that I want to stamp sentiments on, but it's hard because you have to use a magnet, or if you're not using a magnet and you want to use this little tiny piece of paper, you have to use double stick tape, and it's just wasteful. So this is a great way to use little scraps for stamping because it's going to keep it in place. And I don't need to worry about using my anti-static tool and having it get on the grip mat because I can just wipe it right off and not worry about it losing its stick. So you saw that I was able to double stamp that piece of paper and it stayed in place. And again, I'm just doing a little bit more testing here, and I'm just taking a piece of paper. It doesn't matter where I place it. And I'm coming in with this big stamp. And I just want to make sure that you get clean stamping with this mat. And you do. And by the way, I always double stamp my stamps, so this is not a reflection of the mat not working properly. And look at that perfectly stamped image. So number 4, off the edge stamping. This is huge to me. So now I'm using my big Misti, my original Misti, and I'm using the size that goes with that, and I'm just placing it right in my Misti again. And I've placed a piece of A2 cardstock, and now I have this large stamp. This happens to be from Pinkfresh Studio, and you can see it goes off the edge. So again, I wouldn't be able to place my paper in the corner, and using a magnet, I could use a magnet, but I would worry that it would shift on me. So the only option would really be to use double stick tape or something like that. So this is great that I can just stick my paper in there. And again, I can even come in with my little chamois to clean it off. And I don't have to worry about it not retaining its stick. All right, this is an interesting one. If you have unmounted rubber stamps, like I do, this one happens to be from Purple Onion Designs, this can actually help you stamp with them. Because they're unmounted, you have to have something to hold them to then stamp with. So I thought I'd give this a try. Now, when I went to grab it with my Misti door, I wasn't sure that it was going to work, but once I pressed it in place and I stamped it up, you'll see that it holds the stamp, and I can even get a double stamp. It's not moving, and it worked perfectly. And I think this was the second biggest size, or the second smallest size grip mat that I used to do that. All right, number 6, you can do stamp alignment. Because these grip mats come with stamp alignment tools. Again, remember there were two of these little stamp alignment sheets that come with each grip mat. So I just put an A2 piece of paper into my mini Misti. And now I can just take a stamp and I can use the alignment guide to perfectly center my sentiment. Now, the alignment guide is going to move, and that's fine. I'm just getting aligned on there. The important thing is once I'm ready to grab the stamp with my Misti door, I'm going to make sure that it is perfectly aligned with my piece of paper. So then I know that when I stamp, it's in the center. And by the way, I did not condition this stamp before using it. I hadn't used it before, so that's why it looks a little swatchy, but look at that perfectly centered sentiment. And that was really easy and really quick to do. All right, so now we are going to take the size that it says that it perfectly fits into the mini stencil mat. So I'm going to take it out and put it in there, and I realize it fits in there perfectly if you actually use the carrier sheet. I'm just using it in there so you can see things better. You don't need to put it in there. It's just easier to see. So number 7, save paper when stenciling. This is a huge issue for me. If you've seen any of my videos, I do not like wasting paper. And you'll see, usually when I stencil, I like to put stencils in the corner of my mini stencil mat, and then I'll use a piece of paper in the corner. But you have to use a bigger piece of paper than what you're ultimately going to end up with. I would rather just use an A2 size piece of cardstock and just stencil that so I don't have to waste any excess paper. So now you see that I can do that. I can put my A2 size piece of paper on the grip mat, and then I can put my stencil over it, and it's gripping both, and neither of them are going to move. So again, I'm going to go through this really fast because this is not the important part. And by the way, I've had product names pop up throughout the video just for informational purposes in case you're interested. But again, my focus is just to show you the different ways that I was using the grip mats. So here I can just line up my second stencil, and I don't have to worry about it moving. And there you go. Look at that perfect stencil result. All right, so now I have the 6x6 grip mat, and I have it on my water media mat. And I'm going to put the guide. I'm placing it upside down onto the grip mat. And that's because when I flip it over, you'll be able to see the guide. Now the guide has marks for an A2 piece of cardstock, so that's what I'm lining this up with. And now I'm going to come in with a 6x6 stencil, which those are pretty common on the market. And now I can just make sure that when I put my 6x6 stencil on here, that the design is centered onto my A2 piece of cardstock. And again, this is so that I don't have to use a larger piece of cardstock than I want. And I don't have to keep throwing out paper. So this is one of my favorite things about this product. Now you will see as I'm stenciling that there are parts of, while I'm stenciling, there's ink going through parts of the stencil where there's no paper. So where is that ink going? It's obviously going onto the grip mat. And I'll show you in a second what that means. Now these are Pinkfresh inks. If they were distress inks, they would come off pretty easily. So look at that perfect stencil result. Now, here's where I'll show you this little area here. Orange and red inks are the biggest culprits in staining things. Like, think of your clear stamps. If you use red ink, it's going to stain, right? It doesn't affect the clear stamps. But if this bothers you, there's a stencil extender. That was one of the accessories. So here I have my 8.5 by 8.5 grip mat. And I'm going to take out the stencil extender. This has an opening in the center for an A2 piece of cardstock. And there are also a couple masks that are included for like a circle or square. I haven't even attempted to use those yet, so we're just going to focus on using this for an A2 piece of cardstock. Okay, so let's just go back to what the issue is. You place this on your mat and some ink goes through the stencil onto your grip mat. If that bothers you, you can use this extender. And the way it works is you just pop your stencil into these little notches. And when you then place this down, there's that opening for the A2 piece of cardstock. So your stencil is clinging to the grip mat, and the stencil extender is also clinging to the grip mat. So now you can stencil like you normally would, and the only thing you need to worry about cleaning is, again, the stencil and the stencil extender. So if you're using red inks, this is a good thing to have. If it bothers you, it doesn't bother me to have ink stains because I've been using the stencil mats long enough to know that it doesn't affect the quality or use. All right, so another way to use these is to use the grip mat guides. And this set has 3 guides. There's the placement guide. There is a radial guide. And my favorite, which is the rotation guide. And I'm going to show you, when I think rotation, I think Turnabout stamps. If you're familiar with Concord and Ninth, you know that they have Turnabout stamps. And each stamp comes with this little guide to help you get things centered. And so here's the rotation guide on my grip mat. I put it on the back. And I can move it around in my Misti. And so this is the Turnabout guide. And you see how those diagonal lines line up with the rotation guide from Waffle Flower. So now I can just place that on my grip mat. And the way this works is you want to place the stamp onto this guide. You have to line this up, otherwise the Turnabout stamps won't really work. So now that I have that lined up, you can see it actually grabbed everything. This stamp is pretty sticky. But I can just pop this guide or the grip mat back in place because I knew it was in the corner of my Misti. I can move it around because it's not sticking to my Misti. That rotation guide is in back. So now I was worried about centering this piece of paper, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is the step we did before, which is lining up the stamp and the Turnabout guide with the grip mat. So that part's done. It doesn't really matter what size paper you put in here. Now you'll see I have a splotch, and that was because there was kind of an air bubble in the stamp that I didn't notice, and that's no problem. I've fixed it, so my subsequent stamping will not have that little blotch. And that's easy to cover up in my final card. So now you'll see I just rotate it and I go to my second color. Now this is the first time I've tried this. I did not test this out. This is the first time I'm trying it, and you'll see that I got a perfect result. So here's my third rotation. And because I'm very forgetful, I'm just making sure that I'm turning it the right way. So here's my third color. And finally, I'm going to do the fourth rotation. Again, checking myself. And here's my final color. So now I'm just inspecting it, making sure there's no overlapping. Because the thing about the Turnabout stamps is if you don't get it perfectly aligned at the beginning, some of your stamping will overlap each other. But this was a perfect stamping, aside from that little splotch, and you'll see later how I covered that up. All right, so here's the placement guide. I have an A2 piece of cardstock on my grip mat, and I'm just placing this guide on top just to give you an idea. So this helps you if you design by the rule of thirds. You'll see that the piece of paper, now you can see the thirds, you can see the exact middle. You can also do landscape orientation. Again, I didn't really do anything with this guide. There's also the radial guide. Now, I still have my rotation guide on the back, so I'm lining up my radial guide with that. It's really easy to do. And that way you know that that circle is in the perfect center of your A2 cardstock. And so what can you do with this? You can create a design that gives the illusion of a circle. So I just took a stamp, placed it on one of those radiuses, and now I'm just taking some scrap paper and stamping. And now I can flip it around 180 degrees and stamp again. And this was just me testing this out, just to give you an idea of something that you could do. And I happen to have a circle die on my desk that I grabbed, and you can see when I put it there that it did give a really nice circular design. So use your imagination of how you can use that guide. All right, number 10, use oversized stencils. So here I have my largest grip mat, the 8.5 by 8.5, and I have that piece of paper that we had stamped earlier with that off the edge stamp. And you'll see my stencil is actually bigger than this grip mat, and that's okay. You don't need to, if there's part of the stencil hanging off the grip mat, that's okay. The majority of it is sticking down. And now I can just come in and stencil as I normally would. So this is nice if you have slimline stencils. This is great. So again, gonna breeze through the stenciling. And this was the matching stencil to that Pinkfresh Studio stamp from earlier. And I'll have products listed below. Most of the details for the cards that I'm going to show you at the end are going to be my blog. So there'll be a link to my blog as well. And last stencil. So I did include finished cards at the end, just, I don't know, thought you might want to see them. But again, that wasn't really the focus of this video. So here we go with the final colors and the final reveal, and again, a perfect stenciling. So number 11, wait, what? Number 11? Yeah, I could have kept going. So one thing I do a lot is I stack die cuts. And if I have a delicate die cut like this, I have to hold it with my finger. This is me showing you what I normally would do. I have to hold it with my finger and not get glue on my finger. And then if it's really delicate like this, you'll see it can shift around when I'm trying to glue the top layer on. So this is something really nice about these grip mats. You can just put your bottom layer on the grip mat, and then you can add your glue, and it's staying in place. Now, some of the pieces were coming off a little bit, but it wasn't a problem. The majority of it was sticking to the surface. You can see a little movement right there. So I'm just going to add my glue. And then when I come in with my top layer, it's nice because it kept it in place. I didn't have to worry about the whole thing shifting around. It just made it a lot easier to do. And I have a lot of these delicate word dies in my stash. So now I'm going to pick it up because when I stack my layers, I like to fiddle around and manipulate all the areas so I can make sure each area is covering that white layer. So I didn't mean to be as careful as I was and not get glue. So here, I'm going to put glue on here and let's see what happens. Now I'm going to go do the dishes. And here I've come back maybe a half hour later and the glue has dried. And if I actually had nails, I would be able to peel this up easier, but it just peels right off. And I was trying also to be a little careful not to scratch it with my nails. But now I'm just coming in with my chamois, my wet chamois, and it just comes right off. So it's nice to not worry about this thing cleaning. All right, one thing I wanted to include was just my ideas for how I'm going to store these. So I have this mesh bag. You can find these in a lot of places. This happens to be from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm storing my grip mats in here. You'll see the carrier sheets on the bottom, and then I have one of the guides on top. And I can also fit these accessories, and then this bag also fits the Big Daddy, the 8.5 square grip mat. This mesh bag happens to be, I think it's like 10 by 12. And then another option for storing are storage envelopes. So I have this large storage envelope, and this stores the 6 3/4 by 8.5 grip mat perfectly. And I'm even going to put my little 6 by 6 grip mat in there as well. It holds both of them. So that's a great option if you have large storage pockets. And then there's also this sleeve. This is again from Simon Says Stamp. This fits the 5.5 by 8.5 perfectly, which makes sense because that is the size of a half sheet of cardstock. So that just slides right in there. And again, I have my carrier sheet. I have it sandwiched between the carrier sheet and the alignment guides. All right, so here are the cards that I made using some of the techniques that I showed you in this video. This is a fun shaker. And for this one, I used the Waffle Flower shaker cover. And here's another little shaker I made. This was with that Concord and 9th Turnabout. There's the splotch that I was able to cover. Here's the Pinkfresh Studio card I made. And I will have details in my blog for all these cards. And here's this fun popcorn card that I'm really excited to send to my son at camp. We are both popcorn addicts. So again, details in my blog. There'll be a link below. One thing that I did not get to show you because I was trying to limit it to 10, but one thing I found was these mats are really good for stamping with an acrylic block as well, not just with the Misti. I know that not everybody has the Misti and a lot of you still use acrylic blocks, so I just wanted to mention that. I hope that this video has been helpful. I know it was a lot. If you're still watching, you're amazing. I appreciate you. And I would love a thumbs up and click the subscribe button as well. I would appreciate that. I will see you next time. Bye.